So far in the last classes, we had seen what is ASP.NET and some of the controls in ASP.NET and how web pages work in ASP.NET and all those things. I think or I hope that you people have tried it out and you have created your own forms and stuff. Okay, so with respect to continuing with the syllabus of the second unit, I'm going to finish two more topics today is state management and caching. Okay, so this is something what we are going to discuss in this class is general web technology. Okay, so I'm going to say that we have already seen all these things in PHP, JSP, or Python if you have worked with in web technology. Okay, any web technology you take, this is a very important section or a sector in which you will have to focus and understand the concept. Code will change based on the programming language which you have chosen. Okay, so let's start with PHP. I think most of you would have worked with. I guess you have, yeah, all of you have worked with it. JSP, I'm sure all of you have worked with Java servlets and stuff. Okay, a special segment what we covered in those technologies is sessions, cookies, okay, hidden field values, all these things. Okay, that is something which we are going to see here in .NET also, because .NET, ASP.NET is also a web technology, and obviously it has all the other things what other web technologies should offer also. Okay, this is a web technology concept what I'm going to discuss today. But what we are going to see is how ASP.NET has taken it over and made it so simple for us to understand or how to or to work with that particular state management concepts. Okay, so let me just quickly go through that. Okay, typical web forms. All right, normally they execute on the server and they are stateless. Okay, I guess this you would have seen it every programming or web language you have started with or learning right now. Okay, they'll obviously tell that all web technologies work on a protocol called as HTTP, which is stateless. Okay, I hope you understand the word stateless, which means it does not maintain its state. It does not remember its state. Okay, so when I, for example, if I type google.com and I press enter, the first time the HTTP which takes your request from your browser to that server will do that work. But when you click on F5 or when you type google.com and press enter again, HTTP does not remember that just a moment ago you had refreshed or you had called google.com. Okay, the only way a server can remember who has come inside or who has been requesting this particular page or not is by maintaining the state. Okay, the state of that particular web form. Web applications normally are stateless. Now, what I've said so far does not change with ASP.NET. Please understand that. This is for any web technology you take into consideration. They are stateless. All right. Now, before the rendered HTML page, this is what I just said to the user, your web page objects are destroyed and all client specific information is discarded. That's why when you type google.com for the first time and the second time, okay, even if you press refresh on your browser, the server or the system thinks or HTTP thinks it is just a new request. Okay, everything is a new request according to your web applications because all web page objects are destroyed before your HTML comes back to the browser, which means it doesn't remember what happened now. Okay, it's a very short-lived memory. ASP.NET gives you a lot of tools to help you to bridge this gap. That's what we're going to discuss in today's class. Okay. And the most notable is a persistence mechanism, which means storage or state maintaining mechanism called view state, which automatically embeds information. All right. That's what is one of those things. It's very important in ASP.NET, which is kind of like a unique feature of ASP.NET. I've just kept a simple table here. Just go through this. This is the gist of my entire presentation in the first session. Okay, so state capabilities. Just look at this diagram. I mean, the table. We will just divide out. Everything is in one table. It is there. Okay, I just wanted to understand all these things. How do I maintain state in ASP.NET? What are the ways in which I can maintain the state of a ASP.NET application? There are two ways. One, server. Number two, client. Okay, you have already come across two keywords in that very common: cookies, session. Okay, and I've told you to remember how to understand where they are stored by the first letters of those two words. Cookie, they are stored on the client. Session, they are stored on the server. All right, so that is still there. It is still the same thing, same idea, concept, everything. All right, but little bit more extra. Look at the server side. There are two in the server side. One, application state. Okay, this is not to remember something about a particular user, rather a particular application, which means everything, all users, not just one user. All right, session is specific to you. You log in, it's specific to you. But if anybody who comes to the website is accessible, I mean, accessing data, like for example, this page counter and etc. Okay, that's for the entire application, not for a particular page, not for a particular user. Okay, how many times you have visited is a different thing, that is stored on session. How many people have visited my website, that is application. I hope you got the difference. All right, so application data is accessible by all users during the entire life of an application. Session, however, it's associated with each user. Normally it is associated with a particular user, like a shopping cart, etc. Okay, so I guess I need not explain much about session and cookies with you, but I'm just going to tell about how ASP.NET maintains its state. Okay, with respect to server, application and session, only two things, only two ways in which server can store all these data. Now, what about client? The most famous thing in client in every technology is cookie. That is coming second here, but the first one is called view state. Okay, it retains data related to one page, such as filling form fields. Now, in the last classes, we had seen that we had made a form, registration form. When you clicked on submit, the page refreshed because it is submitting the form to the server. But in other technologies, if you had seen like PHP or JSP, when you click on form and submitting it to the same page, all your form data will be reset unless you have removed the data from the URL. Otherwise, it will reset everything. Okay, because it doesn't remember. When you press submit, the page has been reloaded. So when you reload a page, it will go back to its original state. But in ASP.NET, when you press submit, except the password field, everything else will be remaining as it is. It will stay in that same place because of this concept called as view state. Okay, it retains data related to a page. Okay, I wanted to focus on that word called a page. Only one page. It will not take you to the next page or something. In that page, if you want to remember something, we use view state, and it is inbuilt in .NET. You need not write code and all. You can just enable or disable it as you wish. Okay, that is view state. Second one is the most famous and common in all web technologies, cookies. Okay, cookie is a small text file which stores data on the client's browser's storage. Okay, remember that. I think I've already told you how cookies work, but let me repeat it once again. It provides you a way in which you can store some information about the user on the user's computer. Okay, not on the client side, sorry, not on the server. It is stored on the client side, which means on your system. All right, if you remember how cookies work, I've told this. Every time a request, for example, you type google.com and you press enter, your browser quickly, what it will do is it will go and search the browser folder for a particular cookie which is originated from google.com, and it will send all those cookies along with the request to the server. Server will now recognize that this is the same person who came a little bit earlier, so you will not be asked to log in once again. You'll be taken to that particular person. For example, if you log into Google, okay, once you have logged into Google and you type gmail.com, all right, so when you type gmail.com, basically it is going to call mail.google.com. Right, which means what Google will do is, or the browser would do is, it will search for every cookie which is associated with the word google.com and send it along with the request. So when the request hits the server recognizes, oh, this is the person who has already logged in, and it will not take you to a login page, or it will not take you to the Gmail interface. Rather, it will take you to your inbox directly if you have logged in already. This is done using cookies. I think I've shown in the last class by disabling cookies in a browser and trying to access Gmail. Okay, it will not work. Your Google is specifically or based on cookies, which means if cookie is disabled in your system, you cannot you cannot log into Google. That's all. Okay. Third one, query string, passes values between client and server in the URL. All right. This is normally done using get method, if you remember. All right. So if you create a HTML form, you take two inputs and you press a submit button. Okay. So when you click on submit, when we go to the next page, okay, in the next page, you can see in the URL that where question mark will come, and then name equal to value and name equal to value will be on the URL. If you use post, it won't be there, but in get method, you can pass it using the query string. Okay, this we had done in JSP, if you remember, with respect to CRUD, I guess. Yeah, with CRUD, we had done this. We had created an edit button. Okay, I think it's 1 year over, but still, I hope that you remember that edit CRUD operation. What we did, we had a button there. Okay, we created one row and we created a button with the word called edit, and we said href is equal to edit.jsp question mark, and then we passed user id is equal to, then we put the data. Okay, when we do this, basically what I was trying to do is not to submit the form, but when you click on this link, I will take you to the next page where on the URL it will say question mark id is equal to so and so. Okay, that is query string. Passing data or maintaining the understanding which the user has clicked, even though your HTTP will not remember what you have clicked, but the URL will remember. So URL is a query string. Okay, passing data using the URL itself is one of the ways in which you can maintain or make the system remember whom or what you have clicked on. Last one is hidden form field. Okay, this is not what do you call a server-side technology, but this is a general idea of making input type equal to hidden. Then you can put a name, you can put a value. This will not be shown to the user. Okay, but it will be shown or it will be passed as a form data to the next page. Okay, in that case, the next page can tackle it. So these are the ways in which ASP.NET also offers. In this one, what is specific to ASP.NET is view state. Remaining everything is there in all technologies, not just ASP.NET. But the code will be different, guys. It will be in C# or VB based on what you have chosen. In our case, it will be in C#. Let me just quickly finish this. Okay, and one more file before I proceed. I think I had not mentioned much about this file in the last classes, but let me just give a little bit more focus here. If you remember in JSP, in J2W technologies, when we create a particular servlet or a web application in Java, when you create a web application using Java, there will be one file called web.xml. I hope you guys remember. In Android, when you created a new project, there was a file called manifest, Android manifest.xml. Okay, what are these files basically doing? They are just the configuration of that particular project stored in a neat format. You cannot modify stuff there as you wish. You have a particular format, you have to follow that particular format, and whatever you mention there is taken for the entire application to work. That is web.xml in Java, Android manifest.xml in Android. Here in .NET, we call it as web.config file. Okay, please note only the name is web.config. The file is actually XML. Remember that. Okay, the web.config file is basically an XML file which stores the configuration information of your particular web application, not a particular page. Guys, remember that it's for one particular project what you have created, one web.config will be created. Okay, so what is web.config? It's an XML file used for storing information to customize your application level settings across your entire ASP.NET website. Please remember that it's for your entire website. One web.xml in Java, one web.config in ASP.NET. That's all. Okay, and this file provides a maintainable, convenient, and secure means of storing configuration information. I think by the name itself you can make out that. All right, and it is placed in any directory. Normally, it is placed outside all other things. It will be on the root directory of your or root folder of your project. Okay. It can be placed in any directory. The reason is the system will search for this file first. I'll tell you the working little bit. Okay, so server will start looking in the parent directory, and if it is not found, it will start looking into every directory until it hits the root of the website to find out this particular file. If this file does not exist, your project does not run. I hope you can get that clear. So let me proceed. Making changes to the web.config file will cause it to reload the next time a resource has been requested. It is that sensitive file. Okay, remember that it's a very, very sensitive file. And it can contain sensitive information, as I said. By default, your ASP.NET will not allow this file to be accessed from the web server. Okay, you cannot access, unless you're a developer, you will not be allowed to access this particular file even from the web server directly. Okay. Now let's see each of these things in a little bit more detailed fashion. What is view state? Okay. Once the page code has been finished running, okay, once you, for example, if you call default.aspx or hello.aspx, some aspx file you're calling, okay, and what happens when you call an aspx file? It gets parsed, converted or compiled on the server side. Okay, that can be anything. You do whatever you want in the server side, but when it comes to the client side, it should be pure HTML. That's why I put in the bracket just before the final HTML is rendered and sent to the client. Okay, once the page code is finished running, all coding, everything is done. When it comes back to the client, you cannot say that I have C sharp, I have Python, I have that, this, nothing you can tell. You have to only convert it back to pure HTML so that the browser understands HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, so what ASP.NET does here, it examines all properties of all controls on a page. Okay, on a page, I'm repeating it again, view state only stays with a particular page alone. All right, and if any property has changed from its initial state, for initially if it was blank and you filled something, when you are submitting the page and it is re-rendering itself and it comes back to the browser, okay, ASP.NET makes a note of what information has changed in a name value pair. Sorry. Okay, in a name value pair. All right, so and finally what ASP.NET does is it takes all that information what is there in name value pair, and it will serialize it, or in other words it will encode it into base 64 string. What is a base 64? It is just make sure that there is no special characters, would not be a valid HTML, etc. That's not important, guys, but just remember it converts everything, whatever information is collected from that particular page. So you will see that difference. If you want to see the visual difference, first run ASP.NET page. Okay, just take any page for that sake. With, let's say that validation form what we had done. I hope you people have tried it at home. Okay, so run that page without entering any data. Right click on the page and see the view state. Okay, there will be one small block in the top of your page called input type equal to hidden, name equal to underscore underscore view state. Okay, I'll show that when time permits. Okay, so if you have that view state, see how many encoded characters are there. If it is very minimal, which means no much information has been put. When you press submit and then go back and see what is there in the view state, it will be more, because that encoding, there will be one base 64 string. It will be like one series of encoded characters, okay, which will be decoded into information by the system. We need not do it. But what view state will do is whatever information has come new to that particular page will be converted or will be serialized into a base 64 string. Okay, and when you are calling it back once again, it will be inserted into the form. Okay, it will be there'll be a new field, a hidden form field with all this information, so that the page's information is never lost even if you have submitted that page to itself. Okay, that is view state. Remember that. So let me just quickly give you a simple hint of how do you remember these three things. View state is between only one page. Session state is between one user, any number of pages. I hope you get this. View state is one page and one page only. Session state is one user, any number of pages. Like for example, when you log into Facebook or log into Google, okay, you log in using one page only, but any other page you visit, they remember that it is you. So on the top corner, you'll see your name. Okay, which means all information which is pertaining there is specific to you. Okay, pages are different. Like you can visit somebody else's profile, you are visiting a particular pages, you are following some, you're looking at a video, whatever you are doing there, that is mapped to you. The number of pages are n, but you are only one. So that is session state. What about application state? Application state, n number of users, n number of pages of one particular website. These are the three important things I wanted to remember. View state, session state, application state. Okay, so let me just quickly finish. View state will have a small price to be paid. Why? Okay, the reason is, if for example, if I have like one or two controls on the page, that much storing information is fine. But what if I have like say like a full resume building software? I'm making a full web application with resume building, which means you have to type a lot of data inside it. When you type a lot of data, view state will become bigger. When view state becomes bigger, your page size will become bigger. That's what I'm trying to explain in this slide. Because view state is stored in the page, it will result in a larger page size. Okay, and when the client receives a larger page and sends hidden view data back to the server in the next post back, again the page size is bulkier. Okay, normally HTML should not be bulky, but then when the data is more, the HTML page also becomes more. And if your internet is slow, this might be little bit slower compared to other pages. That's all is the price which we need to pay if you are using view state. Okay, that's where it takes longer for both receiving and sending pages. If you have lots of control, guys, remember what I had done in the last class will not make that difference. But if you have like a resume building full fledged page, then it might be. That is why normally people divide it into small pages. I hope you would have seen that. Earlier we used to take everything in one page and all, but now if you see, everybody breaks the page down. Everybody breaks that registration form into small pieces. Reason is this. Okay, if they take many information in one page, the page size becomes bigger, and that also makes your page perform slower. Okay, but if you take it divide, like for example, they take first personal information, then they take your educational qualification, then like that, if they make it into segments, it will be faster instead of taking everything in one sheet. Okay, remember this. Working with view state. How do I programmatically manipulate? Okay, without programmatically manipulating, by default, view state is enabled in all controls of ASP.NET. All controls of ASP.NET. Why I told that 2 times is because there are 2 controls in the toolbox. One is HTML based controls, other one is ASP.NET based controls. All ASP.NET based controls will have view state. HTML controls will not have, because HTML doesn't have view state idea itself. Okay. So how do I work with it? Okay, that's what I've been telling so far. View state is used to store information that does not span for multiple pages, which means view state is for a single page. Okay, only for a particular page. That's all. And this is appropriate for persisting data on a single page that is used for multiple requests of the same page. All right, remember this. That's important. And to set a variable into a page state, okay, into a page, if you wanted to use something only within a particular page, then your code is going to be very simple. Okay, all these states, view state, session state, application state, all the 3 are understood like a array. Okay, an associative array. I guess those who have studied PHP will remember this word. Okay, associative array. What do you mean by an associative array? All right, normally arrays are used or accessed using its index, numbered index. Okay, like for example, you create an array of integers, you call it as numbers. Okay, if you wanted to call the numbers, you'll say numbers of, within square brackets, you have to give the index. Index, if you take, it will get the value, or you can assign a value by saying numbers of 0 is equal to 10. Like that, you can assign a value using the index of that particular. That's a normal array. But when it comes to an associative array, it works like let's say I think you have worked with dictionary in Python. Okay, you have a name colon, you'll have value. Like that, if you have views, if you put a name of the array within square brackets, you type within double quotes a particular name, and then you assign a value. That's called an associative array. All right, so here your view state, application state, session state, all the 3 are associative arrays. You can see the example there. View state of name equal to value. That's all. Okay, so this is how you set the value inside a view state. So how do I get the value? All right, you put a variable and you say is equal to view state of that name. That's it. It's like putting I is equal to 10. How do I get the value as 10? Put I. That's all. All right, so that's what we have done in the way of code. Okay, this is how you set a variable into page state. Please note, whatever you put inside this particular view state of name will only stay in that page where you have typed the code. Okay, imagine if I have first.aspx and second.aspx. If I wrote this code in first.aspx, I cannot write view state of name in the second page. Only in first page it will work because it's a view state. Okay. So this is the definition. What the state is it's a bag which is like a data structure maintained by the page for retaining values between round trips to the server. Okay, remember this. This is for view state. Second one, session. Okay, what do you mean by a session object? I hope everybody knows what is session, so I'm not going to explain much about that. Here, the word they've used is session object. If session is an object, there should be a class. The class name is system.web.sessionstate.http session state class. Okay, please note. So that is it's an instance of this particular class which is stored inside the namespace called system. Inside that there's a folder called web. Inside that there is a separate class called session state specifically to HTTP session state class. So the object what we are using is session object, which means the class is HTTP session state. Okay. So it stores any type of user specific data that needs to be persisting between web page requests. I guess I'm not going to, I need not tell you more about session because you already know about it. Okay, it is specific to a particular user. It is not specific to a page or it is not specific to a particular application. It is specific to a user in that application. Okay. So it is like dictionary style, same as view state, name value pair, representing the user's data for that particular session. Those who have worked with PHP, you would write $_session. $_session, square brackets, you put a name, then you put a value. Here it is as simple as just doing that same thing. Okay. Session is often used to maintain such thing like username, user ID, shopping cart ID, whatever you want to keep. Okay. And they are no longer available once the user has logged out. Remember that. Okay. This is the code what I wanted you to see. Okay, look at this. In PHP, you would have written $_session. Here, you just write the word session square brackets within double quotes. You can write whatever value you want to take or whatever name you want to give. Okay, and then you say value, where the value comes from. If you look at this line of code, what I have done is whatever you have typed in the text box, I take that and I store it in information. Session of credit card is equal to the text what you have entered in that text box. So whatever you have entered in the text box, I'm going to store it in session for that particular user. Okay, remember that. That's very important. Now, please note these three are the classes. Any of these three will point to the same object. All these point to the same object of session. Page.session, page.context.session, http context.current.session. All these three point to the same object, which is session object. So the simpler code is for you to remember only this much. Session of name is equal to value. Where is the value coming from? It's coming from the user from a text box. That's it. Okay, how do I get the value out of it? Okay, now please remember here, I want you to recollect. We had seen a concept called boxing and unboxing. Okay, if anybody remembers that, can you tell me what is boxing, what is unboxing? Can anybody just put it quickly so that we can proceed? What is boxing, what is unboxing? In C#, I discussed this a little bit extensively. What is boxing and what is unboxing? Object to data type. No, not data type. I'm looking for something else. There are two types of data types available in C#. Okay, I told you this earlier. Value type and reference type. Okay, remember that. When you convert from a value type to reference type. Okay, to object. All right. So in this case, what we see is session is an object or a class of an object of a particular class. Okay, according to, if you remember what we had discussed in reference type and value type, all objects are reference type, because you do not, when you copy something, you don't copy the entire value, you only copy the reference to that. Okay, that's why it's called a reference object. So here session is basically a reference data type. Okay, so when you put something inside that, it's like a box and you put data inside it. What I've done here is boxing. The first line, you have taken text information, maybe for example 16 numbers, and you put it inside a session object. Okay, which means you have boxed it. But when you remove it, unboxing. Okay, if you remember that example, please go check that example. All right, if when you want to remove it, or when you want to remove from that box, you will have to convert it to its appropriate type. Here I've converted it into a string. But what if I wanted to take it as a number? I can't take it as an integer because credit card number is 16 digits. Okay, so I cannot take it as an integer. Probably I can take it as a double or a long. Okay, I don't think so long also, double probably. Okay, so when you take that out, you'll have to typecast it into double. I hope you follow. Here I'm not typecasting, I'm just saying to string. Why am I converting into string? Because right now what is stored here is an object. Okay, because I put some value inside a reference type. When you do this, this part is called as boxing. What I've done in the second line is unboxing. Take it out. How do I take it out? Session of that same name dot to string. Convert it into a particular data type and then store it into a string. Okay, how do I remove value from a session? Session dot remove that name of that particular sessions object what you gave. That's it. Just remember these three lines. It's more than enough. Session of name is equal to value. How do I get the value from that? I'll say session of something on the right hand side, but you'll have to typecast it or convert it. If it's a string, you can just put dot to string. But if it is a number, you'll have to say int of or integer dot parse int. Okay, or int dot parse or float dot parse, something like that. What value you want to take out, based on that, you have to convert it and then retrieve and store it. Okay, to remove a session, You just need to give session dot remove that particular name. This is session state. Let me proceed. Okay. In session state, there are three options in ASP.NET. Okay. What do you mean by session in three states? Okay. In normal way of working, session is normally stored on the server. It is not stored like in a database or something. It is just stored there. Okay, as a text file, like how we store cookie in our client, there is something stored in the server, in the server's memory. Okay, but in ASP.NET, you have choices. There are three choices given. One, in process. That is what all technologies follow. Please remember that. This is what all other web technologies follow. In process. It runs in the same memory space as your web application. Okay, here it is ASP.NET. There you would have used PHP or JSP, whatever it is. Okay, that is be there. And this is the best performance if you're using one web server only. Okay, you'll understand this shortly when I say this, only one web server, which means you do not have branches. You do not have google.com, .co.in, like that you don't have. You have everything in one server, then this is perfect. Okay, if I, for example, if I log into google.com, okay, it doesn't mean that google.co.in will ask me a new, username and password. Okay, second one, out of process. This is a moderate performance, and it is stored in a volatile memory somewhere else. Okay, it is stored in a separate space, like session data in the RAM of your app in your server, but not in the same as your application. It's kept separately out of the process. Okay, process means your application which is running, guys. Okay, and if you say in process, same memory space as the application. Out process outside the memory space of that particular application, but still in RAM only. Third one is a more what do you call, it's slow compared to other things, but one thing is, even if your server crashes, the remaining two will go off. If your server crashes at a particular point, in process or out of process, everything will be cleared. You'll have to log in once again. But when it comes to SQL, it is slowest of all these things, but it is more what do you call it, is more susceptible, or it is more strong with respect to website failures. Okay, and it can be used across the web service, any web server you take up. Okay, so in Gmail, if you have noticed, I think I've shown in some classes, in Gmail keeps a track of where and all you have logged in from, which IP address you have logged in from. Okay, that cannot be stored in just the client's or the server's memory, because when I keep it in memory, if the system has some failure, that data will be erased, and I'll not know where they have logged in from, when they have logged in from. That is stored in the database. So Gmail or Google uses SQL Server to store your session information. Okay, the session state. But that's why it can be used across web servers. Not only google.com, when you go to youtube.com, still you find your Google data available there. Across web servers. Okay, that's also more important. This is session state. Now, I think this I've already discussed with other technologies. There are two ways in which you can track a particular session. One, by default, all web technologies follow this with the use of cookies. Okay, it's cookie based session tracking. All right, which means session will be created on the server, but that session, like me, there'll be hundreds of people who are logging in, right? So for every user, I'll create a unique ID, and I'll store that ID in my server, in my client, in a cookie. That's how we work with sessions, right? So imagine if I am trying to log in Google, I will create in Google will be creating one box for me named as 12345. That's the session ID. It's just like the box's name. Inside that box, I'll have my data. Okay. Now, how do I access that data? I need that ID, which, because like me, like hundreds of people would have logged into that same server. So how do I know this person? I use the session ID. Session ID, where it will be stored? It will be stored on the client. Why is it stored on the client? Because every time you refresh or request the page, cookie will be sent along with that request, right? So I can take that cookie and find out whose session it is. So this is by default used by ASP.NET. Not only ASP.NET, most of the web technologies will follow this cookie based session tracking. It keeps that. Okay, if the browser doesn't support cookies, this will not work. Okay, now you can figure it out what Google uses to maintain their session. Okay, disable cookie in your browser, try to access google.com. You will understand what I'm talking about, cookie based session tracking. Google uses cookie based session tracking, which means if your browser does not allow cookie, it will not work at all. It will not allow you to log in, as simple as that. Okay, that's all. That is cookie based session tracking. So what is the alternative if I'm not using this? Okay, most of you would have seen websites like bank websites. Okay, next time when you're using net banking, check the URL. All right, check the URL. There'll be weird characters. There'll be a combination of characters given because session ID will not be stored in a cookie. Rather, it will be stored on the URL itself. Okay, that is called cookie-less session tracking. All right, and if this session ID is encoded as part of the URL. Okay, when you send that URL to the server will decode it and get the session ID and then give you your session back. That is normally working with banking websites. Okay, but cookie based session tracking is used in almost every website. Okay, as a result, cookieless session state works whether or not the browser supports cookies. That's one important thing. Okay, so these are the two ways in which you can have session tracking, either using cookie or without cookies. Okay, if it is without cookies, it should go to the URL. It will be encoded as part of the URL. The last one is application object. Okay, application is an instance of system.web.http application state. Now, what will it store, or how it will be working? Working is still same as view state or session state. Name value pair. It's a dictionary of data. That's it. Okay, and unlike the session object, this data, what you put inside application, is global to the entire application, not to a particular user. Rather, it is given to a full application. Okay, global to your entire application. I have put the code as an example of counter only, website counter. Okay, again, like session, you have these three all point to the same object of application. I wanted to focus on the code part. Okay, what I've done here, counter is equal to 1. Can you see that? Okay, application of counter is equal to 1. How do I change that in view state? I put view state of counter equal to 1. In that case, it will only store the information of one particular page. Okay, and one particular page, when you refresh it, it will keep remembering. But if I open the same page in somebody else's laptop, view state will not remember. The counter will be reset back to 1. But if I use session, every time I visit, when the particular user who has logged in will visit, the increment will happen. Okay, but imagine if I want an increment, or I want to see the counter of how many people have visited my website, how much traffic I'm getting into my website. That is something which I need to store in a global parameter, not in with respect to a page, not with respect to a user. It should be stored with respect to the application which I have deployed on the server. So application of date name is equal to value. Again, this is also called boxing. Why? Because I put an integer. One is an int, right? I put an integer inside a reference type, which this is basically boxing. Integer is value type. Application of counter, which it's an object, which means it's a reference type. I put value type inside reference, that is boxing. Okay, look at the second line, then you'll understand what is unboxing. When you remove that from that box, you will have to convert it into its corresponding data type. You can see that application of counter, next time when you want to increment it, okay, next time the person comes, first time the application counter is called, it will be 1. Next time another person visits, when you call this particular code, what should it do? It should take the value which is there and then add it by 1. So the end you see +1 because I'm incrementing the count, as simple as that. But how do I get the value to come? Because I can't put +1 to an object. I have to put +1 to an integer. Okay, so how do I give an integer? You see that the code which is written in the bracket, typecasted into int. What? Application of counter. Whatever is available inside the application object of counter, take that, convert it into an integer. This is unboxing. And then you are incrementing 1. Now it becomes 2, then you're putting it inside the box again. All right, and it goes on like this. Okay, that's why I told value type, reference type, be very careful guys. That's a very important question, boxing and unboxing. This is an application of that. Okay, now that application state is over. Last is cookies. Okay, so just a quick revision of view state, session state, application state. Okay, view state code is view state of square bracket name equal to value. Session state, session of square bracket name equal to value. Application is application of square bracket name equal to value. Simple. Okay, name value, that's all. View state for one particular page in one particular system. Session state, one particular user, any number of systems. It's just particular to a user. Third one is a page. Okay, sorry, application. It is for the entire application irrespective of the pages. Okay. Now, towards the end, this is the client side part, cookies. Okay, what is a cookie? It's a small text file stored on your user's computer. That's, I think everybody knows this. All right, and cookie consists of a lot of things like what is the key, what is the value, when is the expiry date. Okay, when you create a cookie, you should also specify. If you don't specify, it will normally expire as soon as you close the browser. I think this we have discussed extensively in Java Enterprise Edition class. Okay, so just revise that. You will have a clear idea of what is cookie. Okay, let me not focus much on it. That's what I said. By default, it gets deleted when the user closes the browser. Cookies. All right, and setting. If you set the expiry date, then it might be a little bit more. It might live for a longer period of time. That's all. Okay. And typically you should write a cookie before sending any other HTML. First you should send a cookie, then talk about HTML in the particular page. This is typical. Okay. Now, how do you create a cookie? Cookie is an object. Okay. So what is the class name? HTTP cookie. Please remember that HTTP cookie is the class name. So how do I create a new cookie? Just put HTTP cookie space object name equal to new HTTP cookie. Minimum you have to give name. Value can be blank, not a problem. But look at that, what I have written at the code below. HTTP cookie, that's the class name. Object name is name cookie is equal to new HTTP cookie. You have to pass two parameters as constructor. Here username, that's the name of your cookie. The other one actual, what is the name of your value of your cookie. That's all. Name is username, value is whatever you have entered. Okay, look at the next line. I've said name cookie, that's the object. Anymore, you need only focus on the object. Only for creating a cookie, you need to use new HTTP cookie with a name or name value. Okay, then if you want to add anything to it, you can see that name cookie dot expires is equal to, you are adding a property. Okay, a property called expiry date. So you say name cookie dot expires is equal to date time dot now dot add years 1. Basically what I've done, reading this line of code itself, you can understand easily that you have added the expiry date of that particular cookie for 1 year, which means from the moment this code has been called, as soon as the cookie has been created, from that particular moment 1 year you have to add, so that after 1 year that cookie will expire. It will be there in your system for 1 year of time. That is creating a cookie. Okay, with that I am done with state management. Just give me a moment. Okay, the next segment is caching in ASP.NET. Okay, this is also an important section in our part. Okay, that they both come together, state management and caching. All right, state management, we have seen how to retain states and all those things. Now, when does caching come into picture? Okay, what is a cache? Okay, before that, yeah, let me just ask if you just recollect earlier when we used to work with Internet Explorer, okay, or any browser for that sake, we had a restriction of how long you can use the internet. Okay, normally we used to do that. We used to open Wikipedia and we see the articles what we wanted to search, because there's no time for us to read the entire thing. So we go visit that particular page and make sure that we click the option called work offline. Okay, when you click on work offline, what the system will do is it will take that page and store it in a cache. So that after you disconnect from the internet, if I put work offline and see, I can still read the Wikipedia article without connecting to the internet, because I've already taken a cache of that particular page in my system. That idea of storing a particular information, okay, when as soon as it's connected to the server, I store it, I take that and keep it in my system. Now also you would have seen that in most of the browsers, cache. Okay, there's a cache memory, which means some pages, first time you visit will be a little bit slow because it will be loading everything. The next time you visit that page, it will be much faster because they have already cached some data inside their storage. So let me just quickly go through how caching is done in ASP.NET. Okay, there is 3 types of caching available in ASP.NET. 1, output caching. 2, fragment caching. 3, data caching. That's all. I wanted to understand the idea here, guys. So let me quickly finish that part. What is caching? Keeping a copy of something for later use. Okay, if it's an intensive page like Wikipedia has a lot of images also. All right, so right now we don't bother about whether there are a lot of images, a lot of video, nothing. We just need to use it because we have so much of data available now. But earlier, number of data, for example, I think BSNL, if you remember, this much KB, this much paisa. Okay, so for 1 KB, 1 paisa was there. So the number of data which you use, if you refresh next time and you get new data, or the picture is downloaded once again, you'll have to pay for that also. So for that particular purpose, it's resource intensive, right? Because it's kind of like using your resource again and again, and you're paying for that. Now it is a little bit different, but imagine if you're paying for every KB of data which you're downloading, that becomes a problem for us for later use. So in that case, we use cache. Okay, if it's a resource intensive operation. If it is just text, we don't have issue. But if it has images, we will have issues. Okay, not only image, any data if it is bigger than size. So we have discussed about that. Now I'll just quickly skip this part. Okay, so if you want to, if you can't store it in database also, because database is stored in the server. I want something which I can refer my client once again later for that purpose. Okay, caching is a concept which increases your application's performance, scalability, and availability. It will look faster when you cache parts of your website. Okay, the more you fine tune your application's caching approach, the better it performs. So it's a very, very important concept. I want you guys to remember this. Okay, it can be used in many ways, but luckily ASP.NET is made very easy, this particular caching concept. Okay, now let me just quickly give you what is output caching, what is fragment caching, what is data caching. Output caching is whatever comes as an output from a particular page. Take that entire thing and cache it and store. That's output caching. Okay, whatever. It's a way of creating a dynamically generated page content in the server's memory or disk for later retrieval. Okay, that's it for output caching. Whatever has been retrieved, this will be perfect for people who are using this result based applications. Okay, now imagine that if you are looking for a 10th result and you searched for your result and you got that result. Okay, next time you press refresh or if they do that something, nothing should change because the data will not change immediately. So instead of going to the server and increasing the load on the server, if you accidentally press refresh or you just want to see whether that is a truth value or some other thing. Okay, in that case, if I keep that copy of that particular page in your system's disk, next time you press refresh, I will not take you to the page or I'll not give that request to the server. Rather, I'll just retrieve it from my system and show it to you that this is same marks like that. Okay. So this will not be regenerated again and the time also will be less. Okay. So once a page is cached, it can serve again every time the request goes to the server once again. It will not even go to the server. It can just be retrieved from your client and given out. Okay. So you can give the page output cache by giving this one small thing on the directive. I hope you know what's a page directive. We have discussed this extensively in JSP. Same thing applies in ASP.NET also. Less than percentage at whatever you give followed that is called a directive. Here it is an output cache directive. Normally in your page you already have a page directive. Here I've set 60 seconds. Okay, if I say 60 seconds, 60 seconds of whatever first time when you retrieve whatever data has come will not be modified or it will be cached for 60 seconds, which means it will not be requesting that page once again for the 60 seconds next which is coming. Now with this diagram I'll stop guys, just look, have a glance. Let's try to understand how a page or how cache works. Just look at this diagram. It's very simple to understand. Okay. The first time you request a ASP.NET page, what will happen? It will get compiled. Okay. First time. Remember this. The first request you give to an ASP.NET page, the page needs to get compiled. When you compile, you get a .exe file in your client-side application. Okay. But when it comes to a server application, it will be a .dll or a .exe. Some assembly will be created. That's what this .NET's working, right? You remember that, I hope. Okay, so it will be stored in the server's hard disk. Correct. That on the right side, you see that. Okay, and then once you execute that, you get an intermediate code. Okay, and that intermediate code will be converted or will be what do you call when you execute it in the CLR, .NET CLR. Please note the CLR is not on the client's machine; it's on the server machine. And .NET CLR, once it gets that intermediate code, MSIL, it just converts that or in dynamically in just in time, it converts it to a response. Basically here the response should be HTML. This is how normally ASP.NET works. Okay, what about the next time you give a request? The next time you request that page, compiling will not happen because you did not change the code. You have just refreshed or you have given a different input or something like that, but you have not changed the code, which means compiling will be skipped. And the .exe or .dll which was stored in your disk will be called and directly it will execute and give the result as .NET CLR. This is the second time. Okay, now what if I apply cache? Okay, what if I apply a cache? What happens is what comes as output from the .NET CLR? the HTML output what you get will be given as a response. Also, a copy of that is stored on your hard disk. Okay, in your hard disk. What happens in that case? All right. Next time you request, please note the arrow marks here. The next time you request, if the caching is done, the next time you request, everything from the server side is kept on hold. The request directly goes to your hard disk and gets a response immediately, which means it'll be just as fast as opening a page in your system. Okay, this is what caching helps you to do. Let me repeat it once again. First time you give a request, .NET page is called, it's compiled, and once you compile, you get an intermediate code, which is exe or DLL, which is stored on the server's hard disk. And when you run it, it goes through .NET CLR, the runtime, and then gives you an output as response. Very simple. Second time you run that same program, you need not compile it once again. You directly take that code or the intermediate code which is stored in your hard disk, execute, and then give the output. But imagine if you put caching in between, the copy of that particular page, the response of .NET CLR, what you got after doing all these things will also be stored in the hard disk of your system. And the next time you call it, it will directly take from the system and give it to you, which means it will be much faster compared to any other type of caching. This is output caching, guys. Okay, and the last two things is very simple. Fragment, just understand, output is full page, fragment is part of a particular page. Okay, that's all. It's just a particular part of a particular page, not the entire page itself. Okay, that's all. I'll just skip that. And let's go to the last one. Data caching is if you have database access for a particular part of a page and you want to cache that data. For example, like petrol prices or US dollar rate, that will be changing only once per day. Not every minute it will be changing. That will be that can be cached. Once the data comes, it can be cached and kept, so that next time you access it, data caching can be employed in web services. Okay, I'll talk about web services in the next unit or something like that. Okay, so with that, we will stop for today, guys.